Good morning. Welcome to Working Toward Coherence, aligning WASC, SPSA, and LCAP. My name is Barry Groves. I work for ACSA. I'm also a commissioner for WASC, and 30 years I was a superintendent administrator in Santa Clara County. We're very excited about presenting this one-hour presentation today. We're in Sacramento at the ACSA office. We have over 900 people signed up to participate today, so we're very excited about that. If you take the entire presentation today, or you have a friend who would like to see this, know that we're going to be posting the link for this after the presentation on both the ACSA website and the WASC website. So there'll be two places during this presentation where you'll have a chance to ask questions. Questions will be in your little chat feature that you have on your webinar. This next. That we have with us, we have three basic organizations who've been working together over the last several years, trying to work toward coherence so that local educational agencies, district schools can work together to putting together these WASC, SPSA, and LCAP. We'll also tell you not only best practices, but what we see in the future, what we're trying to do to help you at the site. The folks we have in our panel behind me, and I'll be stepping out of their way in just a second, are Marilyn George, who's the Vice President of WASC, Nancy Brownell, who is the Director of WASC. She's also a school board member. Thomas, who's the Deputy Superintendent at the California Department of Education, also a school board member. And Edgar Zazueta, who is the Senior Director of Government Relations here at ACSA. We're going to be talking about how we can bring together these three disparate things to really focus and create a coherent program for you at your school sites. We're going to be talking about the local accountability, ongoing school improvement, and plans that are aligned with LCAP and with the WASC focus on learning. We're going to be starting with WASC and looking at the design elements, the link between LCAP and SPSA, and the school-wide action plan. Then we're going to be moving to the State Department of Education, who's going to be talking, and I think has some exciting things that we hope are going to be happening in the future, is how we support the coherence of both SPSA and LCAP. And then we have Edgar, who's going to be talking about what we're doing at ACSA to help the sites and focus the school site and district leadership actions and how we can bring the board into that process. Again, we'll be starting with WASC, go to CDE and ACSA. We'll have a chance for questions, and hopefully this will lead to better outcomes for kids. With that, I'm going to start with Marilyn George, who's the Vice President at WASC.
Thank you, Barry. Good. I'd like to spend a few minutes just reviewing the basic design elements that we believe are so important. These are over 25 years ago and have been continually refined. In fact, Nancy Brownell was one of the developers of this process that we have used jointly with the California Department of Ed and WASC as we support schools in ongoing improvement. If you title of ACS WASC there, I'd like to present to you that WASC really stands for We Are Student-Centered. And in mind, this has been our cycle of quality that we have embraced for years. Note that it's an ongoing 24-hour, 7-day-a-week school improvement process, emphasizing how are we as a school trustworthy to support high-quality learning. I like the big red of the follow-up because every 6 years, the school does a deeper look, emphasizing a focus on how well are students learning? Are we doing everything possible to support that? And ongoing then, as we decide where should we focus. Now this is where, ultimately, as you think about ongoing improvement, I'd like to more diagram. Obviously, in any basic transforming coherent schooling process, we assess, we evaluate, we plan, and that's where the school-wide plan, which is integrated into the single plan, so it's one plan, so the LCAP. And the goal then in the follow-up is implementing, monitoring, and refinement. And the line in our process is a reflective process that's saying, what are we doing, but is it effective? So where I'd like to go now is highlighting key design elements that have served us well as we keep refining them, integrating initiatives from the state of California. And the first one is, who are we? What do we believe is important? And that culminated always in what's stated there in the red on the slide. Basic beliefs and vision, based on current and future learning needs of the students. What is it, in the global sense, we want all students to know, understand, and be able to do? These complement help look at students. How well are they overall, if you will, in the 21st century language, meeting the 4 to 6 C's? Effective leader, collaborative, valuing diversity, worker in terms of critical and creative thinkers with others. Based on that, I'd like to show you a couple examples of how have pulled their stakeholders together and of school-wide learner goals that support then what schools are doing in their action plan, which is the final product of any self-analysis. I call it the feet forward, the GS, if you will. Here's a statement from a school engaging teachers, students, and parents. Our goal overall is how we prepare students to be innovative thinkers. Note of descriptors help all of us as teachers planning our units and involving students. How do we help students, for example, build on ideas, explanations? How we look at another point there, help them define the problem or create original work. And so the broader goals that have been integral to the focus on learning support schools in their ongoing implementation as well as district emphases. Here's another one that came from a school in Southern California. They work together with their stakeholders and working with their school-wide plan aligned with the district plan. How are we preparing all students to be college, career, and life skill oriented? And then they've defined practical descriptors that can help everyone look at the measurability. How well are we doing? Which is the whole point of our focus on learning process. What's going on, but how effective are we? Now that there are two other key points in focus on learning that support the integration of plans. How we know, based on multiple types of assessments, student meeting school goals as well as academic or curricular standards. And our belief that this takes place through multiple ways of analyzing data, not external data such as the SPAC, but also internal data such as common assessments. Equally important, looking at representative student work based on rubrics, observe students engaged in learning, and gathering rich data through student feedback and conversations and with other stakeholders. So in basic belief then, and where we have worked for years collaboratively with California Department of Ed, how in our process do schools take a look at where are we in research-based criteria and indicators. We just recently revised them again to ensure bringing in important concepts of the LCAP. Slide, I think, emphasizes, as we work together to support student learning, following major goals based on our single plan that integrates the WASC initiatives that have come out and LCAP. Our criteria like to word in terms of students. Notice not just organization to support, it's organization for student learning. It's curriculum, it's what students learn. It's not instruction, it's how students learn, how assessment is used, and above all, how do we personalize and provide academic support for all in a school culture and environment that supports the focus on learning. Last, the focus on learning design process, the foundational change process that then helps everyone look at what we're doing and how is it aligned with the broader goals of the district, a la the LCAP. And as you think about all change processes, for example, Michael Fullen, building a collaborative culture, we look to see is everyone involved and collaborating, they evaluate impact on student learning based on what we're doing. It seems like there's the slide. Where I would like to, run too far, where I'd like to close is that the last emphasis is the focus on learning process that WASC and CDE have continually refined, and now making sure we've integrated the major important points of the LCAP. Support a collaborative culture that nurtures well-being and also all holders. I'm to ask Nancy to build upon this as she goes further in showing the relationship between LCAP and SPSA and the focus on learning process.
Good morning. You'll probably notice in the context of Marilyn's slides is the concepts of an accreditation focus that WASC provides is really aligned well with continuous improvement effort that is going on at a school site along with the district most of the time. And so, as you know, California has moved down a path over the last few years about developing a really coherent accountability system that is centered in the priorities of the LCFF and a focus on the goals and actions and services that are in the LCAP. So we know from the perspective of the local emphasis the importance of these four categories really working well together, and Tom will be talking a little bit more about our newly evolving federal component. But from the perspective of you at the district and school levels, your classroom and school practice and your local accountability processes are really the heart of LCFF and the capacity to really locally determine what's our vision for our students, how are we going to go about helping them be successful, and how are we going to engage our community in those goals, working towards student success. The LCAP cycle should look very similar to the cycle of continuous improvement that Marilyn explored, because in looking at the annual opportunity to measure our progress, to look at refining our actions and services, and now, of course, with the addition of the California School Dashboard, we have an opportunity for both external data around the state indicators as well as our continuing focus on the local indicators. And the goals really mirror, obviously, much of what is happening at the school sites in order to really, again, create that sense of coherence that says, this is what we're about as a district, and here's how it's reflected locally in our individual schools. So when you look at the outcomes of self-study within the context of accreditation, it really is an opportunity for a deeper look at where are we now, how are we involving our students and our stakeholders at the school level, how are we measuring progress, how are we really looking deeper at our data, and as we look at the program's impact on student learning, this alignment of a long-range action plan to refocus in over specific periods of time, again, mirrors the work going on at the district level. And again, there may be some more specificity and a little differences of actions and services at a school level, but in the entirety, it's this team collaboration, the schools and the district working together on behalf of students. When you add the importance of the single plans, the districts really do review plans. They come to the board for approval, and districts describe the actions and services, obviously in the LCAP, that are intended to meet the requirements for the high-need populations, also supporting those often with supplemental and concentration funds. So school plans really reflect quite alignment of detail with those actions and services. And again, if it's a visual and performing arts school, if you're a charter school that's working on STEM, your LCAP is probably very reflective of those specific actions that you are taking on behalf of your students. Obviously is, I think, the important reminder that success is identified really through the instructional core. What's happening for students every day in every classroom, what are teachers doing and engaging with as grade level teams, disciplinary teams to best support their students, and what does the instructional content look like. Those are really the dimensions of success, and all of the work that LCFF has put forward, the folks from your communities and your LCAPs, and of course through an accreditation process or just your school plans, is again continuously coming back to the importance of the instructional core. So when we think about school-wide programs or targeted assistance needs within the context, obviously, of federal support, the goal that was just established in the context of the new ESSA plan was to, again, remember that we're building on what we are doing in California already around the important work of the state priorities, the local work that's underway, the goals, and this deeper look that should a school be experiencing, obviously, an accreditation process, they really spend a lot of in-depth time. Over the course of a year, even if you're not being accredited, this work on analyzing how successful you're being, how your comprehensive needs assessment that probably started with your LCAP community goals, the school-wide plan requires this in-depth look over time, again, through the context of your school plan, your action plan from WASC aligned with LCAP. So all of these are sort of pieces of a whole fabric that you're working on collaboratively and together to best meet the needs of your students. The last couple of slides, I think, remind us that there is this concept of high action and high alignment, right? That the way we get results is that we take action at the classroom, school, and district levels to really try to fully implement our goals and the work that we are supporting on behalf of our students. And I like this sort of description of the importance of not getting distracted and really keeping the focus on the important work that's underway on behalf of really supporting that instructional core. And again, much of the work that Michael Fullen and others have done, I think it's important to remember and sort of discuss in your local context what is coherence? What does it mean to us in our local context? Because we are trying to make sure that we're operating together and kind of moving forward. There is some wonderful work that's been done in this internal coherence framework from folks who took a lot of Michael Fullen's excellent research and really applied it in schools around California and elsewhere. So this importance of this learning, right, that internal coherence enables a faculty to coordinate the work of leaders, teachers, and teams around those shared improvement strategies so that we do provide those richer educational opportunities for students. That's what we're trying to accomplish through this notion of coherence, which brings us to this idea that you probably ought to be thinking about what does accountability mean in your local context, right? And this particular definition, I think, is so aligned with LCFF, right, that it's an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility and to be accountable for our actions, really on behalf of our students and the work that is underway. Continuous improvement, again, I think is worth some conversation because we are in the midst of evolving our accountability and continuous improvement system. So again, this continuous improvement doesn't have a hard start and stop, right? We're always trying to look at our student needs. We're always trying to learn what we can do to be better. We're examining the data. We're reflecting on what it means. We're adapting what we're doing in our context as classroom and schools and districts on behalf of our students. So the dimensions of continuous improvement should look really quite familiar. The importance of, again, much of what goes on in the criteria from WASC, but these are the day-to-day activities that you are working on, both at the school site and within the context of your district plan. And obviously, these three questions go back to a lot of work that we all have done over the years in California about the what, the so what, and the now what, continuing to monitor what it is we're doing and are we getting better at it to, again, improve what is that is happening for students. So the coherence, the school plan and action, the reminder that where are we now? Are we going to need some additional help as we continue to move forward? Do we need to change and refine some of our actions and services? And we continually repeat these actions through the course of the year and the time that we spend really moving forward with our school plans and our LCAPs. So we do try to look from Fullen and Quinn's perspective at these important dimensions of coherence making that you'll see reflected in the work of LCFF, that the Department of Education has been focusing on, that ACSA has been focusing on, and the importance of the collaborative cultures, deepening learning, and looking at these dimensions of accountability in a much different way than in our past model. So I'm going to hand off to Tom, who's going to talk a little bit about the work that the department is doing on behalf of our schools and districts.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here this morning and glad to see so many people are tuned into this. The thing I want to reemphasize here is you're looking at all this. We all know that success in education begins by building programs and policy from the student out. And that in many ways is the California way. What we want to do here in California is actually create a coherent and aligned system, in part simply because it makes us happy here in Sacramento, but it means that you at the local level are able then to focus all your energy on good instruction. So what we have now is a new accountability system that creates coherence through classroom and school practices, local accountability practices through LCAP development, and a new accountability dashboard. And all that has to align with state and federal accountability efforts. Now, the state board on September 13th sent to the U.S. government, U.S. Department of Ed, its California's Every Student Succeeds Act state plan. And this plan actually ended up being submitted a couple days later. But the good thing about this, it turns a new page in the chapter of educational improvement. Now, things I do want people to be aware of, when the state board approved this plan and developed it, it always saw it as an application for federal funds, and that is not seen as particularly as a strategic plan like you might see at a local school district. Nonetheless, the chief concern here was to make sure that our system had flexibility built into it, and we didn't fall into the trap previously of NCLB and forced into the same solutions every year. So what we have here then is a dramatic change. It's not California's new accountability system has changed in terms of the sense it's no longer reliant on a single number or a single indicator. That's an important thing that we have to relate to everyone who's involved in education. We also have to show that equity is a chief focus of this. It's important that we understand, just like in the LCAP process, there are a number of different groups who need help in terms of additional instructional support, as well as outside the classroom environment to improve student achievement. And the other we're trying to do is support local decision making. We want to ensure that local school boards, that local school leaders all have the support of Sacramento in seeking new and innovative solutions in improving student achievement. So we want you to understand that we know these are complex problems and that Sacramento alone cannot solve them, and that we want you to feel that you use these resources to actually help your students. So guiding principles of the ESSA is one, as we keep saying again and again, is a single coherent system that avoids the complexities of the past. We're not going to have competing indicators. We're not going to have competing plans. In fact, what we want to do is make sure everyone can use the same measures in determining effectiveness of programs. We want to ensure that really you see federal funds not as the engine, but the necessary assist in creating improving student achievement. And that's a big shift. One of the things, if you tune into state board meetings, Stu Burr, member of the state board, always likes to remind everyone that federal funds make up between 8 and 9% of the funds for education in California, and the overwhelming source funding for education in California is state funds, and so state programs should be the driving force in education. And your federal funds are to be used as a valuable assist. What this means is that we as a department have to change our program, our approach to districts, and be more sensitive to the needs of local school districts. We've even gone so far as to realign the department's internal structure so that we can actually see ourselves acting more in the areas similar to, say, you school districts have to do that. And importantly, we want to make sure that the state of California actually designs its resources to serve you, school districts. In this sense, federal programs are to serve our state priorities. Now, that's going to be important in all this is California School Dashboard. I put this up here. This is Davis Senior High. That's my daughter's high school, and I'm a member of the Davis Joint Unified School District Board. But I put that up there to reinforce the linkage between all our efforts and this important source of data and indicator to the public. Now, I like to quote Mike Kurtz here. When people say this is too complicated, he goes, well, show me the study that says that parents can't understand this or that teachers can't understand it. Because at this point, if you look at it, it's pretty intuitive. And in terms of our LCAP process, when we use this dashboard, it was actually very helpful to people understanding the needs of our local district. This coherence isn't ending. And what we have to do next at the state level is what's called the LCAP Addendum. And this is where this replaces the LEA plans that you saw formerly under NCLB. Now, there are a couple of things I want to point out here. There'll be an information memo, which is our way of kind of forecasting some of the issues to the state board in October, that will lay out the issues of the LCAP addendum. And then the state board will discuss this addendum that will then be sent out to the field for pilot discussion. Now, this first iteration wasn't created by department staff, as brilliant as they are. They also knew that they had to have input from various people at the district level. So think of it as informed by an early focus group of district folks. But also think of it now as this is your chance to help strengthen this coherence between state and federal programs, because the LCAP addendum will be seen then as that way of mustering federal programs to assist state priorities. And this way we'll be able to create a more coherent system. So I'm really asking for in all of this is your help in providing comments on this LCAP addendum.
We'd like to spend some time taking a few questions. I know if you can send them in on the chat line, we'll try to answer a few.
Right. So first question that someone had asked me previously, if you're starting out in a WASC cycle, how do you use the SPSA, LCAP, and ACS WASC to go forward without just replicating?
Why don't I start the conversation? The Focus on Learning WASC CDE process has several steps or tasks. And the first one is, where have we been? So all stakeholders review what have we been doing over the past few years, and we take a careful look at multiple types of data, now including the dashboard. And so as we look at progress each year on our school plan linked to the district focal points, then that begins the conversation, all right, what seem to be the overall implications of this data as we evidence our past progress? What are the current major student learner needs? What should we particularly be focusing on as we use these research-based criteria to go deeper in our process? Does anyone on the panel want to add to that?
Well, question about the product, as you mentioned, remember the single plan format, back, I don't know, 14 years ago or something, there have been some templates on the department's website, but district always, and schools always had the capacity to develop their own actual format. So the goal is really, and many of you have probably already done this, I know we have in our district, is our new single plan template looks very much like our LCAP template. So the degree to which you have much flexibility in determining, you know, what are your actions, what are your goals at the school, what are the funds that you're spending, along with the consolidated application that does identify electronically. Those are sort of the two pieces now that will be moving forward on single plan. So the department may be coming up with another template once we continue to move forward on this, but at this time right now, you have a lot of flexibility with that.
And I interject, WASC has never had a separate template. We believe schools take what's come out of this in-depth analysis and integrate it into one common sense roadmap or plan that pulls everyone together to make it simple and easy for folks, all teachers, understanding what are our major thrusts as we move forward.
It's from the ACSA perspective. We get this question quite a bit about the SPSA, and you know, the department I think had alluded to the fact that there would be, you know, whether it be a template or just helping our folks along this road, trying to better align that, and that is going to definitely be one of our priorities. If there does need to be any changes, I know sometimes the issue of alignment does get caught up in terms of what the statute says and what they can do. But if there is any hurdles on that end, that's one place that we're going to try to concentrate some of our efforts and work with our members and really be a liaison to the department and remove any obstacles that we may have in doing just that.
Just cross reading of in the chat box. The priorities have been integrated for several years within the schools, developing a student community profile and updating it annually to engage everyone in looking at data. So we've already been integrating and continually refining those priorities as the state has worked to refine and looking at those as evidence pieces.
All two of the questions there, this question about timing. Single plans generally have been due in the fall because federal dollars, remember, are on an October to October timeline as opposed to a fiscal year like California. Some districts have sort of moved that tentative approval of single plans to the spring along with LCAPs because LCAPs are due by June 30th, and then make adjustments to the funding once the confirmation of their federal funds are more clear in the fall. You do have a kind of tentative budget in the spring, so that's really a local decision. And then lastly, this idea of action plan, single plan. If you're experiencing an accreditation visit, your action plan really is your single plan. I mean, as Marilyn mentioned, WASC has always tried to provide schools with flexibility. So the importance really of recognizing and developing coherence is that school plan, which really now should be much more aligned with the LCAP, and then could lead to your student learner outcomes, your ESSLers, your goals for students identified in your LCAP. So we probably don't have too much more time for questions.
I'll address one just because I know it all strikes a nerve. Anytime we're talking about, you know, California or the new system or continuous improvement, and we're in a room full of administrators from across the state with varying from varying parts of the state, the issue of small schools comes up. And I know one of the things that our folks in our small schools committee, our small district leaders always say that, you know, that their interests weren't necessarily taken into account when developing this new system. So that's something that we take very seriously. And I know from the ACSA end, that's one piece where we definitely want to be helpful. We understand the unique challenges that the smalls have, and we've tried to continue to communicate that to the department. And I think the department has been, and the state board has shown a willingness. If there's specific, unique issues that we need to address, that this whole issue of continuous improvement is not just how it relates to our schools, but also to the system that we've put in place as well. So that's one. If there's very specific issues, that's when us at ACSA are continuously looking for feedback on what are those challenges, especially as it relates to the small districts.
And if I could just, I saw a question on how the LCAP addendum be. Well, first of all, I just want to say there are always technical issues because of federal program reporting requirements. Some have been eased up in terms of Title I. The real issue for us is really around Title III requirements in terms of English learner programs and migrant programs, and those are kind of, they can have their own specific reporting requirements. We're trying to make sure that that isn't the sole driver of things, while at the same time meeting the federal reporting requirements in those areas. But to take a look at it, I really would like people to provide their unvarnished comments on that. Don't be in terms of if it doesn't work for you. We can't move forward unless, you know, you provide us with your best thinking on it.
The question up there, how might LCAP SPSA goals lead to SLOs, which means school-wide learner outcomes? We see it all together because as we are now actually working with some districts and piloting a district look to see how are we supporting all the schools, districts have developed their own graduation student learner outcomes, which should actually fit what is it we're trying to do, because any plan always goes back to what are the current and future learning needs of our students. What are we doing to address those? And as those become refined, how do we continually grow? Normally, as I work worldwide with schools, they center around what you and I know as the 6 C's. How will we help students become stronger in creative, critical thinking, effective communication using a variety of strategies, developing character, collaborative cultures, mastering the content in order to apply. So that, I think, is important to see that it's all integrated. The other 2 points, and I appreciate these questions as we go over the chat questions. We have a developmental committee and gathering input from the field. We reserve the right every year to continually refine our process to be sure we're integrating initiatives and key points related to what's happening in ESSA, other criteria of success that are being used to evaluate schools.
You said that WASC schools can't be changed question at all?
I don't think we did.
We're in one more question on what do you suggest when a school is in the middle of a WASC cycle that is bound by goals that really are not in alignment with the LCAP and SPSA. There's no requirement that you keep goals that aren't working.
No.
I mean, that would be a part of your analyses. And if there have been some changes, again, depending on where you are in the WASC continuum cycle, if it's been 6 years or if it's been 3 years, but major changes have been underway, go for it.
Absolutely. The goal is student learning and well-being. If you have to stop in the middle, this isn't working, revise, that's what you do.
Okay. Well, we have one more section. We'll get the slide up there. In relationship to keeping your board informed, really the importance, you will know, Tom and I just want to spend a couple of minutes sort of reminding ourselves, again, from your district and school perspectives, the importance of keeping the board informed through the cycles of both school improvement and your district LCAP. I'm having a little difficulty with the remote. Can you slide?
There we go.
Okay. That, 2 kind of quick reminders that through the connection of single plans, your action plan and single plan from an accreditation, your alignment to your LCAP, that the continuous improvement focus on the instructional core and teaching for learning has so much similarity, right? That it's about the planning, actually implementing to monitor how students are doing, to reflect on both your local data and your more formal statewide data, and the critical component about when students are not learning. This is something, again, we talk about a lot during accreditation visits, but also through the LCAP process. How do we make those ongoing revisions as we continue this focus on the importance of teaching for learning? And with that, particularly under the LCAP model, if you can advance the next slide at all, this isn't working any longer. Hello? To make sure that you are monitoring results. So in addition to teaching for learning, all of the school-wide efforts around organizing for results, right, which is about collaborative leadership, about how you're really ensuring that everybody is clear on what the high expectations for performance of all students and staff, right? And these are the kinds of questions, obviously, that you get from your boards around how are we doing, are we making progress, and more determination both at the district and school level to really continue to focus on the needs, both of students and staff, you know, developing high-quality professional development and collaborative opportunities for your teachers and staff so that you are really able to keep your focus on the teaching and learning goals and results and sustain that over time. So Tom's going to add, if you can advance the slide, please.
One of the great things about this is if you look at that first bullet, that's the same thing we said at the beginning of this process, strengthen teaching and learning. We know that's where your main priority is going to have to be. And also, with that comes, you have to increase the individual capacity of teachers and school leaders. I think one of the things then is you link that to your institutional capacity. In this sense, your schools, districts, state agencies, we're all about continuous improvement. I always remind my staff here at the CDE, we have to model the practice that we want schools to undertake, and we have to learn from the practice that schools are undertaking right now. And I think that's an important thing, that we all can learn from each other, and we're all in this phase of continuous improvement. But we all know that you can't just flip switch and policy changes will happen overnight. We know that these are things you have to do in a phased fashion, a predictable manner, that is also about increasing the capacity for everyone. And lastly, you want to consider federal accountability requirements relative to the new state system, not vice versa. Remember, in the past, we had a dual accountability system, and sometimes federal programs seem to be in the driver's seat. We stated already in LCAP what are our priorities. What you need to do is use those federal accountability requirements to actually foster the goals you're trying to achieve in your LCAP. Next slide. So this is really about, of course, all of all, which is achieving sustained change. And really what this means is looking at how are you actually going to improve teaching and learning? What are your strategies? Have you worked in the past? You want detailed, careful attention to implementation, and you want to make sure that your own staff, teachers, and principals actually are in a situation that they can share new ideas, that they can learn from their colleagues, all with the goal of doing this in a coherent strategy. We know that education leadership begins in the classroom and then works its way up, because we also know good policy starts from the student on out. And so what I want to do here with these goals in mind then is ensure that everyone, not just the department, not just the school district, not just the classroom, everyone is in a mindset of continuous improvement. Looking at the results of accountability, go back to these questions. I don't think they're anything new in education, but it's always good to read to this. How much did we do in terms of improving our students and their learning? How well did we do it? What informs our understanding? And again, the dashboard should be a good part of this, but it's not the only. You also have your local indicators that are important. And is everyone better off? Not just scores are improving, but is everyone better off? And since it's continuous improvement, guess what? We get to do it again. So let's make this an enjoyable cycle for all of us and make sure that it's really something that we all have buy-in and we can all participate in.
So hopefully from school board perspective, with your role in your district offices and reeling out the work and goals of your district through your LCAPs and your school plans, how are you really thinking about being able to support your board's leadership actions? Because while we as board members don't want to overstep our bounds, we do want to be able to talk in our communities about where we are and to re-emphasize that we have some good things that are occurring. We're trying to build on the strengths, and obviously through our LCAPs and our work with our staff, we know we have needed improvements. And what are the talking points really that your boards can use to give high levels of those conversations? I think the revised LCAP template that has the summary document, frankly, we all have that as copies in our board packets as a reminder all the time. And now that we have this new accountability system, it's important that your board members can at least talk at a high level about what the dashboard is, so that you are helping them make those connections between your district goals, your LCAPs, the student goals and success, and the dashboard results. That, again, helps them articulate that with their other community members in a way that says, again, here are good things that are going on, here are the areas of need, and here's what we're doing about it. Also, again, is an important reminder about aligning your school plans with your LCAPs using a format or a template either that you design. I'm sure some of you have already done this, but it really adds to that notion of coherence and helps your board, so that through the course of the year, you are also providing progress updates to your board and community staff as needed. Obviously, that's not at every board meeting, but what is your timeline within both the LCAP revision cycle, but also mid-year perhaps? Here are some of the big issues we've been working on, and to provide some of those progress updates to your board, so that they do have a chance to recognize the good work that's going on. So we're going to hand it over to Edgar.
So just a couple of closing thoughts before I hand it back to Barry, and we'll hopefully have a few minutes to answer a few more questions. From the ACSA perspective, and again, our goal here is to try to help our folks do this work. And we see this in two buckets. One is, how do we help our members, how do we help our administrators in the field do the work? So in terms of training, support, aligning our efforts to help you folks get after all the objectives that we talked about. And then the other end is, let's really reflect on what is working, what's not working, and then see if we have the advocacy arm of our organization. So to go to the policymakers and adjust any of the practices that may need a little bit of tweaking. When we talk about accountability and we talk about the system of support, as much as we talk about continuous improvement, I think it's fair to say our members still come from the perspective about when we bring up this word accountability, is what do they do to me, who's going to do it to me, and when are they going to do it? So I know that's one of the things that we're really trying to help in terms of this culture shift about what is the system of support really going to mean. And that, you know, and credit to the department and to the state board, where they are continuing to look for the perspective of the folks doing this work of what is it that you would like to see. Given that the statute is written how it is, and this is the law of the land, what is that our folks would benefit from? So we're taking that very seriously and continue to want to get perspectives from the field on what that system of support really should mean. We're partnering with SPSA and our county superintendent. I saw a few questions about, you know, working together with the counties on the issue of capacity building. And how do we build those relationships to make sure that, yes, when there's areas of improvement identified, how we work together as a system, whether it be the LEA working with the county to address those needs. And then it gets into issues about flexibility and who's going to provide those services. But again, this is very much a system in development, and we want to help those efforts. We've gotten a grant from the Gates Foundation to further this work and support this notion of capacity building. On the policy end, I think the theme that we hear whether we're talking to a group of superintendents, where we're talking to a group of school site leaders, probably it's always the first or second question or feedback that we get is that folks are there's a lot on your plate. And anything that we could do to try to streamline all of the processes is appreciated. And we've taken that also very seriously. I think that's going to be one of our priorities moving into 2018, because we get it. As much as we align our efforts, even as you try to make all these plans look similar, so you're not duplicating efforts, there are still multiple aspects to this work. And that's why we continue to see what opportunities they are to, we're happy to hear that the department is moving forward on the single plan and the LCAP addendum. That's one place that will obviously be very involved, and will facilitate some process for our members to get us some feedback so we have a unified message going to the department. And the other piece that came up in the questions, and I think we will take this back and maybe try to develop a more targeted resource on this alignment on the single plan. We do have some primarily across the state that have actually done this work and are aligning those aspects into their LCAP. So that's one place where we feel that ACSA share those resources and help everybody kind of move forward on this work. But just to reiterate, in terms of the policy changes and trying to align and see where we could streamline this, this is something that we will continue to ask for feedback from our members. Kind of Barry.
Great. Thank you very much for the panel. We still have some time left for some more questions. The thing that I take away from this, as I've seen, is you have here the people who are basically at ground zero at this alignment coherent issue. You have Tom, who's the Deputy Superintendent at the California Department of Education. You have Marilyn, who's the Vice President of WASC. And they're at the decision-making of some of these questions you have. And the one thing that I would bring back, and I look at their face to see if it's okay, is that you have these kinds of questions about alignment, push back on what is good for kids. Yeah. If they say, you know, this can't be aligned or this one, push back and do what's best for your site, and then, you know, come to us and we'll do the best that we can, because you may see roadblocks along the way, but we don't want those there. We want to make it smooth and coherent for you. So my one thing is to push back if you hear and say, this is what we need in terms of alignment. And questions?
Okay. Also, the alternative schools, and you can maybe jump in too. We know that the system that's been evolving has not really been able to meet the needs of alternative schools particularly. And so out of Cindy Kazanis' shop in the department, there is this ongoing work, obviously, about how to really then look at the needs of alternative schools. And there will be that data forthcoming. Obviously, it's not there yet. So your current local measures obviously will be probably the most that you can use in looking at the needs of your students and how your program may need to be adjusted. I know the timeline for that is underway, and Tom may know it or we can follow up. But we do know that's an important dimension that is still in development. Yet we have a clearer idea of what the dashboard is.
Just to echo, totally agreement with you, and then I will come back and make sure get a better description from Cindy, just so everyone has a more detailed, authoritative response.
I got earlier I commented the language here in the question was WASC goals. I think that's referring, and correct me if I'm wrong, when a visiting committee reflects and gives feedback to a school, they develop suggestions that we call critical areas for follow-up. So what the school identified based on student learning needs, what should be addressed, and additional thoughts. Those we expect are embedded into your single plan as your roadmap that would be aligned with the LCAP goals. They are not on desert islands, so we encourage to integrate. I just did a series of trainings in another part of our region, and we said the goal is that you take what's come out of the visiting committee reflections in your own and integrate in appropriate places within your plan. So you don't have to address them as isolated points, because they morph. They keep evolving as you become stronger or other situations arise. So that's the beauty of the process. It's dynamic and it's supporting your transformation based on your student learning needs, as Barry highlighted.